Welcome to another episode of Meller Notes podcast. My name is William Meller, and welcome to another moment to reflect on topics that can affect or be relevant to your career, to the way you're developing yourself, the way you're developing your professional life, and maybe even the way you're leading your team or managing your business. In this podcast, we usually talk about many topics: AI, technology, leadership, management, frameworks, models, everything that can affect the way you're working, the way you're living, and always trying to think in ways that we can be better every single day. Just a little bit better compared to ourselves yesterday. Maybe 0.2% better than the version that we were yesterday. And perhaps tomorrow we can be 0.3% better than the version that we are today. Today I have a few different topics to discuss with you: some changes, some transformations, and some reflections on things that we are seeing from research, from surveys, from articles, and also from some debates occurring around us that are good to reflect, to think a little bit, to understand how this is actually affecting our lives. And for today, we are going to start actually with one topic that is being quite relevant. Anytime that you open your social media, there is someone talking about return to office. Is that better to work in the office with people around you? Is that better to work remotely and have all your flexibility, save times from the commute from work to home and home to work? What is the best option? Is there one single good option, or shall we reflect on different perspectives on this? Yeah, let's talk about this, because there we have a lot here to think on what is going on around us. The noise on social media is saying that companies are going to return to the office. But the data is actually showing that return to the office not moving one single point. Yes, that is actually something very interesting that came out in an article from Fortune now, very recently, in July 2026. And they are using data from the US Census Bureau. So, yes, first pay off attention here is that this is some US data. But even in the article, they mentioned that this is possible to spread over some tendency across the road. But it's good to mention at least the article what is mentioned and what is data is using, and then we can reflect together from a global perspective on what's going on. Basically, on the report, what the data is showing, it's a fact, is that hybrid and remote work together stayed at around 22.3% in January 2024. And now in 2026, this number is in 22%, basically flat for over those 2 years. But of course, if you look to the big companies, maybe they are doing something different, right? Actually, not. Only around 3% of the biggest 100 companies in the US are fully in the office 5 days a week. So, what we see in the numbers, at least, is that the reality on return to the office is not coming true. But if you open social media, every week there's a headline about a company who is mandating their employees to come back to the office. The problem is always the headline is there to get our attention, to get our click, to make us open a website, because this is how the economy of clicks is working nowadays, right? You need to call for the attention of people so they can click, they can open, they can consume your content and perhaps see some of your ads, and therefore you make some money. This is how the business of those news work. I'm not in this video at least here to criticize. It is what it is. But we always need to look to the data to understand what's going on. And yes, of course, there are industries, there are roles, there are kind of jobs that are returning completely to the office for a reason. In some mandates to come back to the office, actually the data is also showing that it is backfiring to the company, and they are doing a comeback, like going more to hybrid or remote again, because for that kind of job they were comparing the productivity, and they were actually saying that for the teams working remotely or in a hybrid way, the numbers were better. But again, for some jobs, for some specific roles, return to the office and working from there with the team together is showing that the productivity in some terms is getting better. So yes, we always need to understand the whole scenario or when we're talking about coming back to the office. Because I know in the comments, at any time that we talk about returning to the office, we have a lot of passion connected to that. And even that, people are able to somehow put some politics in the middle, right? They are thinking like if you want to work from home for some reason, you are lazy and you don't want to cooperate to grow the business. And then others on the other side, they are saying that if you want to come back to the office completely, you are mandating on people, you are taking their times, you losing time with the family, and they're even getting more stressed because of the time they stay in traffic on commuting and everything. So there's a lot of discussion not based on data. And in this podcast, in this content that I'm always trying to create, I try to get out of those noise and look to actually what is going on. And yes, it is true. I'm repeating myself. I know it is true that for some roles, some teams, and some industries, things are going to be better working in the office. You like it or not. And also, you like it or not, many kind of jobs and roles, people are going to produce much more, much better, and with more quality if they are actually working from home without all the interruptions in the office and not getting stressed in the traffic going to the work in the morning. I mean, I can be even a bit personal here. I get quite stressed in this time commuting from home to work, and I know that is quite common. Then you need to understand not only from the person perspective, because if you take on one person perspective and have a company with more than two people at least, you already have a problem. It's almost impossible to get a consensus on this in your team. That's why you as a leader, you need to stay connected with the data and understand what is the best for the business. And here, I know that sometimes it sounds a little bit cruel. People think that, okay, you're just looking to the business, you're looking to the mental health of the people. And of course, mental health with the people is also connected to business results. People who are sick, who are people who are stressed, they don't deliver good results. And that's also on the job of the leader to bring those analysis, to bring those perspectives together so we can understand what is the best for the team, because what is best for the team probably will also support to be better for the business and therefore for the company goals. But then there's something interesting in this article, in this raw research, that I want to call your attention. You see those numbers and you see that actually in reality companies are not coming back to the office, not as fast as possible right now. But and maybe you think this is like a flexibility winning, right? The worker is winning, and they're winning, the corporate in this case, and that they are winning the battle against coming back to the office. But that is not the point, and I want to call your attention to that, because right now in the same research, uh, there was a question, interesting one for employees, asking about how many of those are actually going to look for a new job just because the company is requesting them to come back to the office. The share of people willing to quit over a return to office order dropped in the same interval of 2 years from 91% to 40%. It's a big change. I will read that again for you. Okay, this is from the research. The share of people willing to quit over a return to office order, basically people who want to l- look for a new job because their company are mandating to come back, it dropped from 91% to 40%. It's a big change. And the reason for that is quite obvious. We've been talking recently in this channel about how much things are changing nowadays, right? In terms of jobs that are available, in terms of concerns with AI, the layoffs, everything related to the conflicts in the world that is making the economy a bit unstable at this point. So people are not that willing to change their jobs. Actually, they are hugging their jobs right now. They don't want to get some risks to lose their job, because out there is not that easy to find a job. So, of course, flexibility in general is not winning. And yes, we have a strong narrative going on right now in some industries where people are so afraid to lose their jobs that high management up there is just deciding that everyone should come back to the office, and people are not even having the chance to go against that or try to argument over that because they are afraid to lose their jobs. But again, the numbers are showing that remote work still is standing. Things are working in a good way, in a good shape. The productivity numbers are even showing that for many roles and many industries, many kind of jobs, it's better to work from home instead of being at the office. They are going to produce more and with more quality. This is data. This is not opinion, okay? But you need to understand what's going on around us. And again, the cycles that can change all the time. Maybe it stayed flat for over 2 years, but maybe it can change a lot in the coming year. We never know how the cycle will change. And it's the same for the stability in the job market. Right now, people are hugging their jobs. They're afraid to lose the job, therefore, they are not risking it. But it can also change in 1 year, and maybe people are going to have more options again out there. So, of course, if you lead, the main call here is to stop treating the physical presence as a way to just increase productivity if you don't know what you're talking about. You need to have data. And even if you want to convince your team about that 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 reason that you're calling back to the office, you need to be very well sponsored, let's call it that, by those data and with a strong reason on the why. Because just coming back to the office will not solve your problems. If you're having a lot of online meetings, you come back to the office, you're just continue to have all those meetings in person. Is that being more productive? Probably not. It's the same for all the communication going on at the same time and making people be distracted from their deep work. If you're not going to solve that, what you're expecting actually to change in the comeback to office order? And therefore, the question here is it's basically, if the market hit up again now and your team is planning to come back to the office for some reason, do you think that you have good reasons in your company to keep your talents, to make them continue working to you, even working from the office? Or do you think that if the market hit up again, they can leave? That is an interesting question to ask, because look into the article, look into the data. We need to understand from both sides, from a leadership and management perspective, but also from a career and growth perspective, depending on which side you are here. Maybe you are thinking on both, that we need to understand the data and what's going on around us to be able even to negotiate what we want to negotiate. Do you want to work remotely, but do you know what is happening in your industry? Do you have the data that is showing why and how your role can be better working from home? Can you organize those thoughts to discuss with your leader? And on the other way, if you are a company mandate into the office, do you know specifically why? What is the strategy for this mandate to come back to the office? Because if you have no strategy at all, do you know why you are doing what you're doing? Back to the question, this is not about being nice or not. This is about having a strategy in your company, in your business, in your leadership, to know why people are working the way they are working. And one last thing, if your culture in the company depends on just people being present at the office, maybe it's time to start rethinking what do you think your culture actually is. Because culture is not your coffee machine, it's not how people treat each other when they are walking on the corridor. Culture is much more than that, and it's much more deep than that. And you need to reflect on that, on your strategy, before even talking about the local presence or where people should be working, because that's how we design work. Great. And with that, we are more than ready to go to the next topic, because now it's time to talk a little bit about AI and creativity. AI makes you more creative, right? Yes, that is according to the data true. But AI is also making you look like everyone else when you look to what you're able to produce with your creativity. It sounds a little bit strange to hear like that, right? But A very recent article from MIT Sloan Management Review put together some different studies, more specifically, four different studies: a short story writing study, a circular economy solutions, humor contest, and a group storytelling. So, four different studies with a few different groups of people. In all of them, according to the study, the person using AI produced a better individual result. So basically, comparing the version of one people using AI with the same person not using AI, those versions of the person using AI were much better to create great results. Fantastic. So the first part of the study proved, even though it's a small study that needs to be validated by peers and everything, it's at least showing that creativity from an individual level can grow up or can increase if you're using, in a good way, AI tools. Great. Everybody can be winning, can be celebrating this winning, right? But there's one problem that no one is talking about right now. And the problem is this is not about AI boosting creativity. This is actually about what it makes it looks like creativity when you're actually putting the people together in a group. When you look to the whole group in the studies instead of one single person, the similarity of the ideas and how much creativity looks like were almost equal. People were thinking similarly when using AI. Even the pool of ideas, the pool of how they found good like stories and writings and jokes, they were very, very similar. And the biggest look like to this data from the research, this is I took a note because I think it's fantastic. The biggest individual gain came from the people with the lowest baseline creativity without AI. And even the pool of ideas in the whole group got much smaller when using AI. So, what is the whole conclusion here that we need to think? Yes, AI can raise the bar for from individual perspective and put you here. The problem is that right now with AI, everyone is on the same level. Even those who are here, they are being equalized on this point. And here I'm talking only about creativity, okay? I'm not talking about productivity because, of course, a very good argument here can be yes, but a software developer who is super good, if they use AI, they will produce much better output than someone else that is not so good software developer using AI. So you're not equalizing people. Actually, the great software developers, the more senior ones, the more qualified ones, they are gaining this battle. Yes, of course, from productivity perspective for sure. But when it comes to creativity work, then the story is a little bit different. What it's becoming more and more rare right now, it's thinking differently. So what is the solution? How we can make things how can make creativity be a thing again in our teams and be careful on how we use AI. Basically, the order matters. It's valid for your company and for you from an individual perspective. We need to diverge first. We need to think first on paper, alone, in group. But we need to do that before using AI. And that's exactly what the study is proposing as a conclusion. AI should come after. After you already made the thinking, after you already create your idea, after you already use your human brain to think about a solution, about something you want to create. Think about writing, for example. I love writing. I do that almost every day, or actually every day. Every idea that I have is mine. Sometimes it's a very short idea, but it's still mine. Sometimes it's a very complex one and I need to break it down. But I just bring AI to the process of producing an article, for example, owns my whole idea from the beginning to the end is completed. So I have my thinking, I have myself into that. And then I use AI, of course, to balance my thinking, to help me see other perspectives, to help me see what I'm actually missing, to bring some data that can be relevant for that. So, of course, my writing is becoming more powerful because of AI. But here, as soon as I have my idea completed, I'm leaving the box of creativity and I'm moving to the box of productivity. In the box of productivity, there is no question at all, nothing to discuss that AI can support us to be better and make our performance in this productivity box be much better over time. But for the creativity time, that is the part that we need to protect. You need to still know how to think. That's the question. It's crazy. How can when you say out loud, it looks like crazy. Like remember to think. Don't forget how to think. But actually, that's something that sounds super basic. It's not. It is not nowadays. Humans come first. I mean, what it means to humans come first. What it means human in the loop. Well, basically, look to what you're doing on your daily basis. You get an email from a colleague, you need to respond. You're not even thinking, you're just copying the text using AI to produce some output and replying back. And maybe your colleague is doing the same. And then the whole email thread sometimes is just AI output. Nobody is thinking what they are talking about in that thread. And back to the creativity work from a writing perspective, if we lose that, we are losing what made us great from the beginning. I mean, individually talking, like you maybe have an idea that is totally different from mine. That is what makes me want to read what you have to say, listen what you have to say. I have a lot of thinkings and reflections about different topics. That's what makes me unique. Even the way I organize the ideas in my mind makes me unique, right? Think about this conversation right now. I'm Brazilian. I'm usually creating Portuguese because that is my modern language. And then I of course use AI to help me organize my ideas once they are completed to other language, in this case English. So of course, right now, in just in this video, just this topic, I made a lot of grammar mistakes. I use a lot of words that a native would never use. My pronunciation is it. You can see that something is different if you are native, of course, but that is still what makes my ideas something that is coming from me. And in 10 years, probably, hopefully, the way I organize those ideas in English, the way I talk, will be much better than today because I'm practicing, right? But back to the boxes, if I don't practice, if I don't try, if I don't challenge myself, if I just leave that to AI, which for content creation I can do that. I can just upload everything in Portuguese and let AI translate without my voice, without my thinking, but that's not how we grow. And we should be thinking on how we can grow with or without AI. That's what makes us unique. Again, I'm using that word a lot because I'm concerned with that over time. And for you as a leader, you should also think on that for your teams. If you want to still have all those different ideas and perspectives, you need to have ways to make sure that people are there. People are thinking before the AI, before they too, they can do the thinking themselves. And of course, the tool that makes everybody good, great, polish is the same tool that is making everybody look the same. And that is something that we still have time to change. You have time to change. I hope this reflection is helping you to think in that direction. Great. And with that, it's time to talking about another leadership point that is quite interesting about agreements, about alignments. How aligned do you think you are with your peers and your leaders? How aligned do you think your projects are right now? Let's talk about that. Have you been in a meeting where everybody nodded, they were happy, they look like aligned, and then a few days, sometimes a few hours later, you discover that many people were not aligned at all. They were just a little bit too afraid to raise their hands and go into a conflict, sometimes a needed conflict. Yeah, this is actually the cover from Harvard Business Review now in July 2026 in a research with the Boston Consulting Group. And their thesis in the research is quite interesting. Most big company transformations do not fail because of bad execution. They fail much before that on the alignments. Look, more than 70%, this is the most impressive data from the article, more than 70% of companies fail to beat their industry peers after a drop in performance when they are executing a plan. 70% of the companies fail because they drop performance when they are executing a plan. Crazy, right? It's impressive. Think about how many millions and billions of dollars we are losing because of that. And we are good on digitalizing companies or running those big transformations, but apparently we are never knowing how to make sure that people are aligned. And the problem has, of course, a reason. Leadership thinks that everyone agreed, people stay silent, so it looks like agreement, but it does not mean agreement at all. And then you think that those big problems they are happening like with people fighting, people pulling opposite directions. Actually, the problem is exactly the silence. People are agreeing, as I'm saying, they are stay silent and they forget that alignment on the surface it's much more dangerous than an open fight. Then when people are going to conflicts, they are raising their points, raising their concerns, discussing those concerns. And the more you have a conflict in the beginning that is solved, of course, I'm not just talking about conflict for the sake of conflict. I'm talking about good conflicts that raise problems, concerns, risks in the beginning. This is much cheaper to solve here in the beginning instead of waiting to discover a surprise in the end. And that is the problem with false agreement. People are in go to the meetings, but they are afraid to raise their hands because they don't know how leadership will react to that. And then if that is happening in your team, you as a leader, you already failed. Sorry to tell you. When people don't feel that they can raise problems, raise concerns, raise risks, you already have a big problem in the culture of your team. You already I'm sure, as I mentioned in the beginning of the topic, I'm sure you already walked out from a meeting where everybody was happy, and then a few moments later you discover that someone just messed up with something because they didn't understood what were their roles, what specifically they should have done. And if you are a leader, the risk here is that if you cannot measure that just by reading the room, you are not doing your job properly. Sorry to tell you again that. Because silence in the meeting is not consensus. It doesn't mean that people are agreeing. So you need to be specific. If you are a leader, it can be a team leader, a product leader, a project leader, an organization leader, a senior leader. You need to understand that because that is your role. You need to force for specificity when you are seeking for alignment. Who is going to do what, by when, how? And going to details is important. People think that they are losing time when they do that in the beginning or in the planning phase or in those discussions. But actually, they are saving time, saving money, because bringing up the disagreement early or in an early stage, it make it safe. When you're going to discover a problem just in the end, we have a big problem because the cost of change is so much bigger later. So when it looks like everyone else is aligned, you need to raise a few concerns. A few lights should be turning on for you. We need to understand that real agreement can hurt, and that is part of the game. You need to understand that conflicts, when they arrive, they are making your team more mature. We have a great research and a great book on that from Patrick Lencioni, where we have this phase in any team that is a storming phase, where people they start to feel that they can raise a different opinion. They can disagree with someone in a meeting, and that is a safe environment to do that. It's your role as a leader to build the safe environment. Of course, it's not something that you build completely alone. You build with the team, but it's your role to make that happen, to make sure that things are moving the right way so people can feel comfortable when raising a problem, when going to conflict, when disagreeing with someone. Because agreeing fast is comfortable, and that is exactly why it almost never is an actual agreement. And you need to understand that early, because the earlier you understand that, the better for your leadership, for your team, and therefore for your business results. Great. And with that, we are closing actually for this episode. Thank you very much for staying with me. It was a great time to reflect and connect with you on some different topics. And I hope you're enjoying having this time with me here. But please let me know in the comments if there is something you feel that is missing, if there is a different way you want to see this content coming to you, a different way they want to see this preparation of the content, or even different ways for the topics itself. Maybe you want to see more of books, theories, frameworks. I don't know. Let me know because I will be listening, reading to everything that you tell me. Okay? See you in the next episode. Bye.